Peppa Pig. George is not the same. One morning, Peppa noticed that George was acting strangely. He didn't want to play with his favorite dinosaur as he usually did and barely spoke. Instead, he sat in the corner of his room, drawing strange patterns on the floor. "George, what are you doing?" Peppa asked. "You'll find out soon," he said quietly, without looking up. His words sent a chill down Peppa's spine. Later that day, Mummy Pig tried to get George to eat, but he refused his favorite food. His eyes looked tired, and he kept whispering something under his breath. "Peppa, is your brother okay?" Mummy Pig asked. I don't know," Peppa replied, feeling uneasy. That night, things got even worse. Peppa woke up to the sound of scratching. Looking around, she saw George standing by the window, staring into the night. Moonlight lit his face, and it seemed unnaturally pale. "George, why aren't you sleeping?" she whispered. He slowly turned his head toward her. His eyes were completely black, and he wore a twisted smile. "I'm not George anymore," he said in a low, raspy voice. Peppa screamed, but George disappeared into the darkness. The next morning, George returned, but he wasn't the same. His skin felt cold. He didn't play, didn't laugh, and didn't respond to questions. Instead, he sat at the table, tapping his fingers in a never-ending rhythm. When Peppa tried to approach him, he turned suddenly and whispered, "You're next." Later, Peppa noticed his favorite toy dinosaur lying on the floor, torn to pieces, and strange symbols had appeared on the wall. They were scratched into the paint, and their shapes resembled eyes watching her. Peppa told her parents, but they dismissed her fears. "Peppa, don't worry. George is just a little tired," Daddy Pig said. But Peppa knew something wasn't right. That night, Peppa woke up again to strange noises. She looked over at George's bed, but it was empty. On the floor, she saw footprints leading downstairs. Peppa followed them and found George in the living room. He was standing in front of the mirror, but his reflection moved differently from him. "George, stop it!" Peppa shouted, but he didn't react. His reflection turned toward her, grinning a sinister smile. "He's not with you anymore," the reflection said. Final scene. The next day, George was gone. He was nowhere to be found, but Peppa discovered a note on his bed. "He's with us now." Strange happenings in the house. Peppa wakes up in the middle of the night to a strange noise, like faint whimpering. She gets out of bed and notices that her toy dinosaur is missing. George is awake too and says he had a strange dream about someone standing in the corner of his room, watching him. Peppa goes to her parents' room but finds it empty. The windows in the house are shut tight, and outside there's nothing but thick gray fog. Where is everyone? "Why is it so quiet?" George asks. The TV suddenly turns on by itself, and a deep, inhuman voice says, "You've been happy for too long. It's time to pay for it." The house begins to change. Dust covers the floors, cracks appear on the walls, and the mirror in the bathroom becomes cloudy. When Peppa looks into it, she doesn't see her reflection, but something that looks like her, with empty eyes and a sinister smile. George starts to panic and suddenly vanishes into the dark hallway. Peppa hears him scream but can't find him. Instead, she discovers his toy dinosaur, now covered in dirt. Peppa Pig, George's Transformation. The episode begins like any normal day. Peppa and George are playing in the garden when George trips and falls into a small bush with sharp branches. He scratches his hand. Mummy Pig bandages it and says, "It's just a little scratch, George. Nothing to worry about." But George becomes unusually quiet, and there's a strange gleam in his eyes. George's strange behavior. The next day, George refuses to eat his favorite chocolate cake. Instead, he sits at the table staring at Peppa as if he doesn't recognize her. In a quiet, raspy voice, he says, "I don't like the light. It's too bright." That evening, Peppa notices that the bandage on George's hand is soaked with a strange dark liquid resembling black ink. When Mummy Pig tries to rebandage it, George jerks his hand away and runs upstairs.